see you all again after our lockdown period, and although we've seen each other on Zoom, I thought it wasn't a very satisfactory way of meeting in some ways. It's quite different. You can't really know what a member's thinking. You can't see them the same. But still, I think the staff did particularly well in keeping in touch with us as individually and as a council. And I must just say at the start, the Mayor's not here, but if he had been, I would have said to the Mayor and our councillor members, well done on the annual plan. I think you've done, not that we're fully aware of what's in it yet, but you have got what would appear to be a great outcome for the district. 1.5% increases doesn't hit businesses as hard as 4.2, whatever it was. So I'm sure that wasn't easy, but well done to the councillors and staff on that. Now, just for your information this evening, while we're now back in sort of normal times, this meeting is being live streamed tonight. Now, the good news is there's no picture, it's not visual, so you can, I shouldn't have told you that, should I? It's not visual, but it is vocal, so please don't turn your mics on at all until you get the call from me to speak. So just indicate to me when I'm looking around that you want to speak, and I'll make note of it, but don't put your light on as a signal, because that'll distort the broadcast side of things. So, all right, we move on now. Apologies. I have one apology from Andy Wells. Robbie, 8:45 for Robbie. These apologies be accepted. Moved by myself, seconded by Duncan. All those in favour, please say aye. The contrary, carried. Are there any conflicts of interest? Appear to be none. The first item is on pages. No, you're a board appointee on that. That doesn't give you necessarily a conflict. Most members that are on a board like that, if they're asking for money, just simply don't vote. I think that would be the first way. And just ask that be noted. You can declare a conflict if you want to, but council appointees don't actually have direct conflicts. No. All right. Right. Current register of interest, pages 9 to 11. It's all there. It's just to put that in place. You wish to speak to Kay at all, or is that? Good.
This was decided the end of last year, and you've had email requests for information. Most of you have given me that, and I have put it in place. If anyone at a later stage or somebody who's forgotten, just let me know and I will have it amended and resubmitted onto the web.
Any questions? It's quite straightforward. Someone prepared to move, we receive it. Moved by Sarah, seconded by Duncan. Do you wish to speak to it? No. I'll put that. All those in favour. So.
I've been appointed as Nationwide Parks representative. Could I get an email?
Sorry.
Only one laughing on at the time at the moment.
Yes, I said that before. Okay, now we come to item 4, confirmation of minutes of some time ago, to pages 12 to 19. Someone prepared to move or accept those? Moved by Jason, seconded by Monique. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. Any matters arising? Don't appear to be. Now we come to the deputations and presentations, and we have Rob McLeod and Erin Clark of the Rangiora Lions Club. If you'd like to come forward and You've got up to 10 minutes to make your presentation. I'll turn my light off and you turn yours on, and at the end of it there may be questions of you. So welcome, sit down and feel comfortable.
There you go. There we go. Okay. Mr. Chairman and board members, my name is Rob McLeod, representing the Rangiora Lions Club. Beside me, I have Aaron Clark as support person, in case I fall over. He is the chairman, the president of the Rangiora BMX Club, and also a vice president within the Rangiora Lions Club itself. We are in the process of trying to obtain some form of storage. We've been putting up with problems with finding spaces for our storage in all our garages and sheds around the back place. And when we come to have an event of some sort, we have an issue of knowing where exactly it is, who's got it and what they've got. So our intention is to purchase a shipping container. It's a 20-foot shipping container. And we would like to place this next to the BMX Club's shipping container on their site at the BMX Club. It would be end on end with theirs. It makes for a very safe and easy storage and access for us through the BMX Club area. We've explored all different other options, which really don't really come up to par on what we are needing. This will give us a single location, easy access. We've been in discussions with the BMX Club, of course, and the committee has indicated that they'd be happy for Rangiora Lions Club to place this container next to their container, where it is shielded from the view from the road by the pine trees, and they've provided their approval in writing, and I assume you all have a copy of that letter from the BMX Club. The land, of course, at which the BMX Club stands is on ECAN land, Environmental Canterbury, and leased to the Waimak District Council. Council staff has advised that we need to apply for a licence to occupy, and that the Rangiora-Ashley Community Board has the final say in granting this. I appreciate that. We believe the site is appropriate. It will not detract from any amenities in the area. The main attraction is the BMX Club, of course. There is already a container in place, as I said. It is well shielded from the public view and has easy access, does not affect any neighbours. The Rangiora Lions Club is a non-profit service club with a good reputation in our society. We serve and work in our local environment here, and we will guarantee that we'll keep this area as pristine and keep the container clean and tidy as if we do get the approval to place it there. We ask the support of the Rangiora-Ashley Community Board to endorse the generous offer that has already been afforded us from the BMX Club. And I'd like to thank you for your time and for this presentation and your consideration in the future. Thank you.
Just a quick question to Jeff. Will that application to occupy come to the next board meeting or later than that? Do you know?
I spoke to Grant McLeod of the Green Space team earlier yesterday, and he has taken on board the matter, and he said he'll double check. Sometimes all it needs is an addition to the original license to occupy. So because the BMX Club has already got the license to occupy, we might need to only just put the Lions name in as a sort of sublease. But he's looking into that now with the property section, and he's going to come back to me as soon as possible. So it is in hand at the moment.
It may have a few little kinks, but I assume it's not.
Don't seem to be any. Rob, the situation is the board hears a deputation. We can't make a decision tonight. That, as Jeff's just said, will come. But we can give you an indication, I think. Can I just say to the board, is there any board member at this stage that has any concerns about it? So that might just give you some idea that the board's likely to be fairly supportive, I think. So thank you very much for coming, and good luck with that. I must say that other organisations might want to follow suit. That could be the only difficulty, but I can't see it at the moment. So yeah, well done. Thank you. Now we move on to Yolanda on rural recycling facility. Welcome. I'll turn this off. You've heard what goes on. You turn yours on and you've got up to 10 minutes. Thank
you. Yes, hello everybody. I'm Yolanda Lawrence. Most people just know me as Yo. Firstly, I just want to say thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, board members, for giving me some of your time this evening. I'm here as the Secretary for the CUS Community Network. I'm also one of the moderators on the CUSLink Facebook page. I'm on the PTA as well, and I'd like to think that I'm a pretty good representative of the CUS community, but here tonight talking about the CUS Community Network's request. So I'm here to talk to you and ask for your help to get the Cust Community Rural Recycling Facility back to the Cust community. The council agreed to a 12-month trial following recommendations from 2 community boards, and now they are sort of indicating that they may not reinstate the bins that have been taken away. After spending quite a bit of money and time on setting up the facility, including a purpose-built bin for paper and cardboard by Waste Management. We want to know why the bins aren't being reinstated, and why was the trial interrupted anyway. I understand the conditions of that COVID-19 have caused. However, because it is a non-contact facility, we'd like to see it reinstated as soon as possible. So the CUS Community Network is asking the Rangiora-Ashley Community Board to support the reinstatement of the trial, and if possible to extend it until the end of the year in order to give a solid 6 months with that new bin to see how that goes. We hope that you were able to support us with this, and thank you for your time. Questions?
I'll be quite honest with you, from the board's perspective, we're unable to say we support you or we don't support you at this stage, because the board would have to get a staff report, so we hear both sides of it before we make a decision on that. So what we can ask for is a staff memo on that at any rate, which we will do, so we get their position. My understanding is that the Solid and Hazardous Waste Working Party is meeting either at the end of this month or at the beginning of next month to discuss that. But the assurance I can give you from here is that the 3 of our 4 councillors here, that's Robbie, Kirsten and Paul, are all members of that working party, so they are in a situation they will have heard what you have to say tonight, so that really strengthens your position to a degree. So any questions?
I'm not sure who answers the question, but I know nothing about it. It's news to me. I was there at the opening, but did this happen all of a sudden, or was it an incident that created the issue that the bins went away, to your knowledge?
So to my knowledge, the bins were taken away in about March, which is 3 months short of the 12-month trial that the council had planned, budgeted for, agreed to and arranged. There had been the occasional issue with some paper and cardboard flying around. The council had actually addressed that and fixed that by providing a purpose-built bin. There were no more issues. There were some confusing messages put out, possibly. To the best of my knowledge, there were no issues. We were just told that due to COVID-19 that the bins would be removed as the Southbrook facility was closing, everything was shutting. The council was obviously looking to reduce costs and difficulties. However, it's a non-contact site. The only contact is when the truck driver has to come and hook up the bins to take them away. People don't take anything. They go there, they chuck everything in at various times. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Understand that the council hasn't made a definitive, got a definitive position as to whether it's absolutely stopped or whether it will continue. That's something the committee will be discussing later. So, yeah, from my understanding, Robbie know a lot more.
I'm not going to make any speeches because it's going there, but I'm going to ask the question. Are you aware there was nowhere to take it? That Eco Central closed their doors? There was nowhere to take recycling. It was being landfilled.
No, I wasn't aware that there was nowhere to actually take everything. So are you saying there was nowhere to store everything that was at Rangiora? So they were just not... So it would beg the question that now that Southbrook is reopened, we would have expected the bins would be returned at the same time as Southbrook being open.
I think with the amount of discussion over recycling just in the last couple of months via paper and that, I mean, I think we should be supporting something like this. I thought that was what the people wanted done. The fact that it was actually being taken to Cape Valley, perhaps it would have been better to have just done that and not told the people, because even I think the problem has come now that some people got pretty relaxed about their recycling and not too worried about it, whereas if they just left it as recycling and don't worry where it went until we get this whole thing sorted, it might have been better for the community, really.
Press it is now. Right. You're much better off not hearing me, Paul. Well, thank you very much. I know that's a bit frustrating for you, but it's, yeah, we'll just have to wait and see, really. So thank you very much. Right, moving on. Reports 8.1. pages 20 to 65. And I'll give you the page numbers as we go through, because if you follow the agenda, they get a little bit wrong from now on. So, yeah. So this is one on the speed limits. Bill, are you dealing with this? I will just tell you, if you have a look at, and I'm sure most of the board might have been equally confused, if you have a look at the agenda recommendation and you have a look at your recommendations in the full report, they're somewhat different. The numbers are all different on the roads. The recommendations are different in one instance. So just so you know, if you get some questions, when it comes to making a decision, I will go off I've had a look at it off the agenda recommendations, if that's all right by you, and incorporate another recommendation you've got in the main report. So it's a wee bit confusing, but yeah. Okay, over to you, Bill.
Thank you. So this report follows on from a consultation that was done on speed limit review in the area that's, we're calling the Tuahiwi to Ashley, but is effectively Lineside Road through to the Ashley River area. We consulted back in September on a number of speed limit changes in that area, and the results of that consultation are included in the report. It would be fair to say that generally the consultation responses were supportive of the changes that we were proposing, although not overwhelmingly so. And particularly with Pegasus Boulevard, it was a fairly close thing. We also, through that process, consulted with NZTA, who raised, I guess, 3 significant concerns that with our proposal, and they were around Tolls Road. And NZTA was suggesting that our recommendation or our proposal to reduce the speed limit on Tolls Road from 100 to 80 wasn't going far enough, and they indicated that they thought there were significant safety issues on Tolls Road, and they were recommending a speed limit of 60. The mega maps, they're a bit of software that identifies safe and appropriate speed, indicated that the safe and appropriate speed on Tolls Road was 60. We had some discussion with them, and in order to get good compliance with a 60k speed limit on that section of road, we thought we would need to do some significant work to it. NZTA suggested that we would need to do some significant work to bring it up to a standard where it is safe enough for an 80k speed limit. And eventually we agreed with them that we would reduce it to 80 at this stage, and we would investigate options to upgrade it to a point where it's suitable for an 80k speed limit and bring them forward for consideration in the LTP. So that's where we've ended up on Tolls Road. We had also suggested through Tuahiwi, following some discussion with the Runanga, that we thought a 40k speed limit was appropriate through Tuahiwi, and particularly past the school and the marae and through to the Urapa. The agency were not supportive of that, and they suggested that the limit remain at 50. They also we went back to them again and discussed a variable 40k speed limit outside the school, which they supported. But we also note that the government is proposing, or has a proposal that they're putting forward as part of the Safe Network program to encourage road controlling authorities to reduce speed limits around schools to 40k's, or around urban schools to 40k's. On that basis, we have agreed with the agency that we will leave the speed limit, or we'll bring to council leaving the speed limit at 50 through to Tuahiwi, and discuss with the school and the Runanga some alternatives for reducing it outside the school in particular, and that could well include a variable speed limit. But hopefully we'll have a little more information on when the government proposes to allow us to reduce it to 40 as a permanent speed limit. And the agency has indicated that because the rule at the moment says that they can't reduce it as a 40k speed limit, they wouldn't be supportive of that as it stands. The third area of concern with the agency was Pegasus Boulevard. And they were suggesting that 50k was the safe and appropriate speed on Pegasus Boulevard. And again, we don't believe that would get very good compliance in the current environment through there. And so we have discussed it further with them, and we have agreed to reduce it to 60 from 70. And we brought this to the Woody and Sefton board on Monday, and their response was that they would like to leave it at 70 at least until the NZTA has decided what they're doing with the speed limits on the state highway. So just for your information, that was the response from the Woody and Sefton board. And the fourth area that we had some discussion with the agency over was unsealed roads. And we had suggested reducing unsealed roads from 100 to 80. The agency is saying that they would support going to 60, and that the current operating speeds on all of the unsealed roads that we have in that area is around the 60 to 65 k sort of range. So they're suggesting that on that basis, 60 is appropriate. They're also saying that as we progress with the changes that the government's proposing, we will come under a regional speed management environment, and they believe that that will result in or potentially could result in a regional blanket 60k speed limit for unsealed roads. So those are the issues that the agency had, and our responses to them. Happy to take some questions.
First question, why would you want Tulls Road at 60 kilometres an hour for? It's a rural road?
That was certainly the attitude that the staff were taking in our discussions with the NZTA.
Another question is, Tuahiwi at 40 kilometres an hour. Is that a standard speed? I get a wee bit confused. I thought it was just 50k, 70 and 100. Is 40k a speed around the area?
Yep, under the new speed management rules, the standard speeds will be 40, 50, 60, 80, 100 and 110. So 40 is a speed that is being encouraged for urban areas, and particularly low volume local roads in urban areas. And so we will be coming under some pressure in the next little while to look at reducing speeds in our urban areas to 40 k's other than arterial and collector roads.
Bill, can I ask some questions just on clarification? Because I read this whole thing and I couldn't help but agree with the letter from the Transport Association. It had some merit in it. But Bill, if we went to page 33, for example, and you outline how you consulted, or are you with me? And we went down to 34 and to Young's Road, for example. Are you with me? Okay. You've consulted with the people at 80 k's. Is that how I read it?
Yes.
You're recommending 60. And support for that is 65%. So if 10 people lived on that road, does that mean there's 6.5 people put their hands up and said yes? Or, I'm just trying to make it how it all come to be.
So we consulted on changing to 80.
Yes.
And had responses across a number of areas, and particularly we had hard copy responses and SurveyMonkey responses. So we're at this stage, I can probably go back and look at how many of those people were living on each particular road, but it may well not specifically include the people who were living on that road. So it was across all of the responses that we got. Sorry.
So you alluded to the 79 responses. So we've had 79 responses to all the charts and the roads that have been put in front of us. Is that how I read it?
Yes.
And it would be possible for somebody at Browns Road, Okuku, to comment on Tulls Road down near the bridge. Is that how the system works? Thank you. Okay.
When you have a quick look at the agenda here and your report, you'll see the differences I referred to in the agenda. Our local roads here, numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, they're all in the board area. And then down the bottom, 22, 23, and 24 are also in the board area. But when you look at this numbers, they're quite different on your report, as you'll see. Not that that means too much, but I just thought the board might want to clarify or may consider moving that we agree with the certain numbers in our board area and note those that are not in the board area and have no opposition or whatever. I don't know what someone might like to move, but we should certainly have a view on the roads in our area of firm view. Definitely I think. So and then you have in the main agenda, you have a Tulls Road, but in your recommendation for us on the agenda, that Tulls Road's in the report, but it's not in the original agenda recommendations. You want that in the motion, I presume, in the notes. Yeah. Is that clear for everybody? Okay. Is someone prepared to move? Well, we'll just sit looking at each other. I'll test the meeting and I'll go off the easiest one, I suppose. I'll move as set out not on the agenda, as set out in the report, because it encompasses everything. That A, we receive the report. B, the board approves B 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 26, 27, 28. And then the board notes the other roads are not within the board area and has no objection to the recommendations. Does that cover it? Quite happy to discuss it. I'm just trying to think as I'm sitting here. All I'm saying there is we support the ones in our board area and we're not objecting to any others unless someone wants to. Yes, I could. Right. It's complicated. One is Coldstream Road from the end of the existing 50 to the multi-sports. 2 is Coldstream Road from the eastern end of the multi-sports to Smarts Road, which is our border. 3 is Golf Links Road. 4 is Marchmont Road. 5 is Smarts Road. 22 is Marsh Road. 23 is Campside, because that's just the border running around the river there. 24 is Youngs Road. They're the roads in the board area. Does that help you, Kirsten? Right, is someone happy to second that or got a better idea? That's not in the board area. The Powers Road's just out of the board area. It's one up from where we come in. We come in on Fernside and move down to Youngs Road, whatever it is. Yep. Well, you can second it if you like. All right. Well, I don't need to speak to it. It's quite clear what I've moved. Supporting the board ones. and have no objection to the ones outside of our board. All right, anyone? Robbie. Sorry.
Just to say, I'm going to be abstaining, and I didn't declare a conflict because this is just recommending to council. When it gets to council, I will be declaring a conflict and not participating. But I did want to be, in case there were any questions that I could have assisted with. But I will be abstaining.
Just quickly, it's never easy to get these right. There'll be people who object and there'll be people who think it's fantastic. The main issue I always see with these speed limit changes is the road has to meet the speed limit. So the condition of the road should be in the right state that people will actually understand that that is the speed they're supposed to be travelling. And my only slight concern, which I'll be raising at council, is will it cost to upgrade these roads to these lower speed limits? Because we simply don't have any additional money in the budget unless NZTA is going to come forward with their speed limit review and provide additional budget for us to actually improve the condition of these roads to actually make them look less like rural roads.
I was just going to say, is there any consideration for, I see Tuahiwi people have asked for possibly speed indicator devices. Is that the signage I'm guessing that they might want potentially? Is there any thought that do they have anything currently, or are they going to possibly get it? I don't know.
Your council has 4 or 5 speed indicator devices, which we cycle around a number of sites around the district. And we're in the process of setting up or identifying a site in Tuahiwi to cycle them into.
Okay, am I allowed to ask a question? Yes. Okay. The only thing that concerns me about the motion at this stage is we have Marsh Campsite and Youngs Road, for example. And previously, when we've done this exercise, have you had any major feedback regarding consulting on one speed and actually doing another? So you could argue that the council was inconsistent or told us some fibs. But have you ever had the feedback, hey, you consulted on something and done something else, and why was that?
Sorry, we haven't had that sort of feedback, and certainly in these processes, I think this is the first one where we're recommending something different to what we consulted on. So we'll potentially wait and see.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this report here is to give clarity as to the intentions with regard to the budget we currently have for Southbrook Road. The board is aware of this particular issue and has previously been briefed about the intentions, well, about the issues and potential options with regard to Southbrook Road. I think at that briefing, I think it would have been obvious to the board that there are a lot of conflicting issues on this stretch of road and probably an awful lot of views as to how they are best resolved. And therefore, without spending too much more time on it, the purpose of this particular report is to give some focus to the funding we have currently at the moment and to delay the bigger, wider conversation about improvements to Southbrook Road until such time as some of these other works and investigations have had time to be carried out and bedded in. I think it would have been clear from the council, the board briefing, that the NZTA funding that is allowed for this type of works is very clearly aimed at a couple of issues, i.e. safety and modal shift, whereas probably the board would see other issues as being more worthy of attention in that stretch of road. And so I think if we continue down the track of investigating the wider, bigger option at the moment, it's likely that we will find ourselves continually at odds with the funders and probably struggle to get any reasonably agreed outcome in terms of what we should be doing long term with that stretch of road. And given that there are two or three other, or more than two or three, there are 4 or 5 other initiatives either already underway or being closed off at the moment, it will be, I think, in the staff's opinion, it is worthwhile delaying any major decisions on there until the impact of those changes has taken place. We had a short briefing with you, Mr. Chair, and the Mayor and the Transportation Portfolio Holder, Councillor Williams. And during that briefing, the issue of the consultation, or the timing of the consultation, which is covered off in section 4.9, was raised, and there was a concern with that briefing that that consultation was occurring too early in the piece, and that they would prefer to see a report back to the board with something a little more solid that would then be agreed would be suitable for consultation. And so because of that, I don't think it's we don't have any changes to the recommendations that are in front of you, because that timing isn't mentioned in the recommendations. But I would allude to the fact that the staff's intentions, if this paper is passed, is that we will be completing an options report before the end of July and reporting back to the Rangiora Advisory Board on the 12th of August with our recommendations for expenditure on that stretch of road. Then there would be consultation occurring, at which time there would be a further Rangiora a report to the Rangiora-Ashley Community Board in October. And then we would be aiming to complete a tender process before Christmas and hopefully have works completed before the end of March. The works that we would be focusing on relate largely to trying to improve the safety for pedestrians in the area. We think that would be something that would be both agreed by the board as being something very useful and agreed by NZTA in terms of their purpose for the funding. And so the next steps would be that we would be looking at what options there were for improving that and bringing that back to the board. We're very aware that the 425,000 probably won't go a long way towards a full-scale improvement to the pedestrians here, such as a signalised intersection crossing, but they are the sorts of things we'll bring back once we've got a little further down with our investigations here. Other than that, I'm happy to take any questions.
One question from me. Do you think it would be helpful, Paul is the council's portfolio holder, and it might be helpful for the board to have him included in that group, if he's willing to? Just seem sensible to me. So whoever's moving it could consider that as an option to add Paul's name to F. Questions?
So just to completely clarify, where does that 425,000 come from, and how much of it is contingent on NZTA funding?
The 425 was really, I think you'd have to call it an allowance rather than an estimated budget to achieve a particular purpose. So there was started in life as $450,000 for the purpose, and I had understood the purpose, although I don't think it's listed in the council resolution to allow the funding, but the main purpose was to investigate options and look at what we could and should be doing. Now, that's an awful lot of money to spend only on investigations, so I would assume that there would be some intention to also begin works on whatever was determined. But it is more of an allowance, I think, rather than a budgeted element that you could say that's what we had funded it for. So it is in the budget for this coming year, in the council budget. Well, it's being carried over to this coming year, and so it will be available to us if this is passed.
Entry question, just my understanding of that original budget passed by council was that it was to improve congestion in the South Brook area, particularly, as well as improve the pedestrian experience. Why wouldn't we spend money on that? And why are we getting NZTA to actually be the person who ticks off what we do in that area, if it's our money?
The 425 is the total budget, of which 51% is NZTA funded.
We know how important this project is, so good luck.
I'd just like to thank Dawn and the Mayor and Paul for including me in those discussions the other day. It sort of was a bit of a shock. I hadn't realised that the government of funding, the changes of criteria is as marked as it is, that it's all about modal shift to pedestrian and cycling and congestion, and motors and roading is all gone. And you're starting to see that too when you have a look at you can't go up a ski field if you want to put chains on or it's snowing anymore. I mean, we're going mad in some of these areas. But the point I thought I picked up from the discussion with you, this is not necessarily lost to dealing with congestion, because the answer to fixing safety, particularly the children crossing the school and coming out of there, could well mean digitised or lights, the Dentures Road, for example, which may also go a long way to dealing with congestion on a short term, while you have a look at whether you want to 4-lane it or whatever. So it's not all totally lost, but the language we're talking, it is. Is that right, I think? Yeah. Anyone else?
The reason I asked the questions I did is we're in a use it or lose it situation. If we don't spend it, then half that money goes back to NZTA. We don't want to lose that money. I can see the sense in what we're doing, but it is very disappointing that this is the main highway into and out of Rangiora. It's an absolute congestion problem, and actually improving pedestrian access in this area may actually make it worse for congestion. The only thing I can hope is it will encourage people to use the western route that we've invested quite heavily in. But I can see a lot of people being very unhappy about the lack of action in this area in terms of congestion, because it has been the most complained about area that I've known of in Rangiora in my time in council.
Yes, I have to agree. I think it's one of the very most complex issues we have. And I think 1 minute we're talking about pedestrians and cycling. Other times we've discussed here how dangerous the whole strip is for pedestrians and cyclists, and why would we encourage or go along those ways. I scribbled in my thing just probably 11 o'clock one night, said, there's a danger of pleasing nobody out of this. You're going to go around and try and please everybody. I think there's a danger that you'll please nobody. And I think what Kirsten has said about alternative routes, I'm just wondering, where are we with the Wood End Road State Highway 1 roundabout? If they're not going to do the bypass through Wood End for another 10 or 15 years, there's still some merit in being able to disperse the traffic so South Brook is not so attractive.
I think the solution, I've looked at this quite solidly with Jared and looked at plans and looked at alternative ways for the children to get out of the Southbrook School through maybe purchasing some land into Newnham Street and bypassing, having to go down through Southbrook Road to get out from the school, but that doesn't seem to be a solution. So for me, I think we really need to be looking in the long-term plan. The solution would be to get a road that extends from Lineside Road east of the railway lines through to Northbrook Road. And I know that is in the long-term plan, and I think we need to bring that forward, and I think that would relieve the situation greatly. And in my mind, that is really the best solution in the long term.
This might be a bit of an awkward question, Tom, but the Southbrook School and the pupils that go there, do they actually come from basically a surrounding area? As would some actually walk from that side and have to cross the road to get to the school, or are parents actually bringing them from further afield?
I could pass an opinion at the moment, but I think that will be exactly the purpose of the consultation, is to really sit down with the school with some options in front of them after the board has considered that, and talk about how many of their students were affected one way or the other. I think probably, we could all say, there's probably three ways people get to school. They are either walking and crossing from the Coronation Street side, or they're walking down from the town end of things, the South Build, or they're driving there. And I would have thought, from my own perception, that the majority of people were actually driving there, that the local catchment, so to speak, of residences that are close enough to that school, I would have thought would be a relatively small proportion of the total school roll. But that's exactly the sort of thing we would be checking through with the school as we firmed up on our ideas.
Just very briefly, the board member Ward. In the early 2000s, I was a strong advocate for that route. Unfortunately, some adverse headlines in the newspapers because somebody thought it was going to cost $20 million to do, and also some unhelpful traffic data stopped it, killed it, finished it. Although we've got designations on some pieces of road, I don't know if we can still link or not.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here today to seek a decision for the community board to consider changing the name of road types to be approved as part of the Townsend Fields subdivision in Rangiora. This has basically come about because of roads that are originally approved, and the layout plan of the subdivision has changed, which means the designations that were given at the time are no longer applicable. So I trust you've all had read the report, and I will answer any questions you may have for me.
Got one, Scott, and it's the naming of the word, using the word crescent. A crescent is generally accepted as a curve, moon-shaped curve that comes off and back to the same road. This one doesn't. Are we setting precedences if we start doing this? I mean, in reality, it's a street, isn't it? No, that's.
There we go. So at the time, I had advised the surveyor or the developer through the surveyor that would probably a street would be more suitable, and that crescent does not fit with our policy because it says something has to meet the same thoroughfare. I think that's what our policy says. And also, I have checked other streets in our district, and most if not all are in that same layout. So I did tell them that street. So if clearly it doesn't meet our policy, so I don't think they would be unhappy if it was changed to street. Yeah. Sorry, move on. So you also have C and D as well. They have to approve those. Yep. So okay.
Item 8.4, pages 153, 159. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I think most of you know me, but if not, I'm Grant Stevens, part of the Green Space team, and I've got a report for you that's not about roads. I'm hoping you've had a chance to read through the report, but just to summarise, we've been approached by the local Baha'i community of Waimakariri, who would like to add an additional 6 trees to the area in Dudley Park, where 2 were previously planted, along with a park bench. The location of those is shown in the attachment, I believe, at the end of the report for you, but it in essence goes along that same line of the existing trees that are there, and the seat would be roughly in the middle of that, looking back towards the netball courts. The cost of this would be met entirely by the Baha'i Assembly, but in order to plant trees or install a seat, it does require your community board approval. And there is an ongoing maintenance cost, mainly associated with the trees. Obviously, in 7 years as they get established, we need to do a bit of work to keep them alive. So I've put in there that is estimated around $40 per tree per annum, and can be met through our existing green space budgets. Yeah, happy to take any questions. Oh, sorry, that's.
I was just curious as to the location of the seat, because I mean, you're sitting with your back to this west, right? Oh, sorry. I was curious the location of the seat. I thought was funny that you were sitting with most people would sit with the sun on their face or toward the sun. Where's the seats positioned facing, east? I didn't think it was going to be a very popular spot because of the location of it and sort of slap bang in the middle of the park, we're halfway along the park. Just seemed to me an odd location, but yeah.
So the location and direction of the seat that did come as a request as part of it from the Baha'i Assembly. I guess in terms of the sun, you would get a nice warm face in the early morning, but yes, you're right. As sort of from lunchtime onwards, it is going to be more in the shade. I guess if we were to turn it the other way, it would be because there's already trees along that edge of the boundary. You wouldn't be in any more sun facing the other direction. So their thinking was that you're kind of looking out over the park. If the board would like to request a different location for the seat, I can certainly take it back to them. But yeah, this is where they had, I guess, proposed it, and we didn't see any major issues from the Green Space Department on that. Yeah.
Sorry, the reason I say is because a lot you see there are like you can see where people walk, and they tend to walk on the south side of the park and cut across the grass there, heading to White Street, so heading west. And so that foot traffic would maybe suggest people would be more likely to sit on that end of the park. That you don't see so many people crossing, going across the side of the park this way where the seat was going to be positioned. But yeah, that's just what I see. I live nearby, you see.
Yeah, I'm not against this at all, but what is the situation with vandalism on young trees? Do the council get many of these new plantings vandalised? And if they do, who would bear the cost of replacing them, and how much would that be? Just thought on that side of it.
Yes, we do on occasion have vandalism to young trees. As far as I understand, the two that have been planted there haven't had any issues as of yet. They've been in place for approximately a year, I think. In terms of replacement cost, should they be damaged, I would anticipate that would probably come to council as just as part of our, when trees die or something happens to them, we have a replacement budget that covers their reinstatement. In terms of how many get vandalised or whether that's likely or not is probably not something I could comment on.
Are we going to take into consideration the location? Are we going to be going back to them and asking them? Okay, cool.
Yes, I was going to move as per the recommendation on the. No, I wasn't, no. Yeah, I think it's very good for a group like this to donate there. Why I didn't move that recommendation or an alter of the seat, well, if they're paying for the seat and that's their wishes to have it, I think it may not be the ultimate place to have it, but, you know, it's at their recommendation and their cost, so that's why I think it's, I'll move that recommendation.
Yes, this is an application or two applications to your discretionary fund. The Rangiora Croquet Club actually sent this application in and just missed the March agenda. So they've actually been waiting for some time for this this money. So I think they'll be quite relieved to know one way or the other whether or not they're getting a grant from you. I think it seems like quite a good one, but it's up to obviously the board. The second item is North Loburn Homes and School Association, which is like the parents association. It's not specifically the school. Requesting that there is some question about whether or not the school can keep the swimming pool running due to maintenance costs of chemicals and such like. The Homeschool Association believes that this is a facility and an asset to the area and the whole community use it. It's not only used by the school, and they would hate to see it being closed. The community uses it a lot to help teach children to swim, and they are asking for the board's assistance to keep it open by supplying the required chemicals during the season. Oh, sorry.
I just have to find it. I would approve, please. $500 each.
And it said that the grant is subject to Education Board funding. Just that the community might see that in the past and try and understand what is the difference between their request that was turned down because it was a school and this request just passed. Just noting, I'm not trying to change the resolution, I'm just noting that's a difference of what you've done in the past.
I think we should probably note this is
Could I just make a comment? In all the years I was involved with school swimming pools, schools never got enough money to maintain them, never, ever. And they always had to go to groups like us to get a bit to fill the gap in, especially for chemicals.
But the point Jeff was making was valid. Unfortunately, it's struggling a wee bit. It is
Mr. Chair, this was also had a slight difference from some of the other facilities which were for school use only. And this was for a wider community benefit. Yes, we did this just before lockdown, and it's been gone through to the council. The council's deliberated on it, and so it's just a ratification to dot the I's and cross the T's.
and you would all remember, you all circulated it before it went.
Is it normal for a councillor to actually move a submission to the council? I didn't believe that we normally would.
Well, how well the council staff and yourself and councillors interacted with us, and how well you had done in the difficult decision making around the financials and the annual budget for this year. So I just let you know that the board's most appreciative of the work the council's done. Okay, now moving on, 8.7. Another ratification, this time it's to Environment Canterbury. Hope we have proper lights next time.
Yes, this is the same, along the same lines as the previous one. The mayor, I think, presented to ECAN the council submission, and I think Jim presented ours. And I think we've had quite a good outcome from our submissions in that ECAN seems to have listened, and I think they are reducing the proposed 9.6 that they had initially indicated. So this is just retrospectively ratifying your part in doing that job.
This is, beg your pardon?
Oh, I can't remember. It seems so long ago, to be frank. The only comments I would pass in opening is I'm starting to get a number of calls regarding future planning proposals around 4 hectares and whether they will continue or whether they'll be contained or ceased. So out in the farming community, I think that's coming a slight concern now that some people do feel that perhaps an option may be taken away from them, and perhaps people don't give up their options very easily. So it is coming a topic of discussion. And the only other point I'd like to bring to your attention was in Saturday's press, the 23rd of May, there's an ad for some fancy high-rise things, obviously at the old Red Lion site. Yep. They call it Founders Corner. Does anybody know or could tell me the history of that? And what I'm getting to is, tonight we've had discussions around street names within our district, and we have some authority over them. One could argue that this is a developer developing a site and using a name that they believe will sell the site. But given the next 20 years in Rangiora with such great changes, some of the growth in the area, there may be some other iconic names that may slip away from us if we don't sort of be slightly proactive or investigate as whether we as the board have an opportunity to name them as against the developer.
We'll come back to you in a moment. It's interesting that Duncan should raise that. I pulled the same thing out, and the original building there on the corner was the Parrot building, which was one of the first, it was a wooden building, stores in Rangiora. I hadn't heard whether that was any connection connection with Founders Corner. For years, that corner was Red Line Corner or BNZ Corner, whichever camp you're in. I've never heard of Founders Corner. Maybe we should, Kay, try and find some background to that. David Ayres would probably know, to be quite honest. But what, if any, control do we have? I don't want to see developers come in and put their pet names on the major corner. That is the major entrance into the town as you come in. To give it a false name, if it is a false name. So perhaps, Duncan, following up, can we get Kay to follow it up and see what we can find out about that, and if anything?
I don't have any view one way on that, whether the names are outright, but I think we should have a discussion about it.
I don't really have too much to say, to be honest. I've been working pretty much full time throughout COVID-19, so there hasn't been room for much more. As soon as we were able to go over a crowd of 10, we got the Waimak walking group out pretty quickly, and we went out to the Haranui district and did a 7K walk out there, and that felt normal, and it's nice to have this back, I think. Nice to feel a bit of normality, but otherwise it has been quiet community build-wise for me.
Well, we've all been very busy on Zoom and getting the annual plan ready, ready to go, but just a bit of an update. I had a meeting yesterday with WAG, which is the first time we've, with the with the accessory and disability people in the district. And what came out of that meeting was that some of the concerns with they thought that everybody coped pretty well, but some of the concerns with some of the elderly were banking and getting cash out and phones with some people. So I thought that was quite interesting. So that's what came out for me, what came out of that meeting. I know that everyone was well looked after in the district, and a few people that might have been left or had difficulties in getting assistance was due to probably banking and phones, and not being able, apparently 40% of some areas of people over 70 do not use computers in some areas. So over 300,000 in New Zealand don't know how to use computers and access banking and things like that. So I think that might be something that we might need to talk to the banks about. A lot of people still for the next 10 or 15 years need to be able to go into a bank and to get their money out, as opposed to not having that service by the bank. So that's something that I picked up from.
During the lockdown, I think we've been zooming in, zooming out, and it's been zooming so much, I think I've been waiting for Bill Rice to come and put a speed restriction on the zooming. But he hasn't at this stage, so that's quite good. Yeah, I've just been pretty much full on with a bit of roading, bits and pieces, water management side of it, with sewage and transfer stations. So it's a bit of everything really. So it's probably too much to give a decent report, but I think most councillors have been actually very, very busy during this lockdown scenario on Zooming, and I think the public have had probably more time to be sitting down ringing councillors and asking and discussing things as well, because they've had all this time on their hands to be sitting down ringing their local representatives. So it's been quite a busy time on a bit of everything really.
About a month ago, I had an experience where I was rung up and asked to come and pull 3 tractors out of a ditch along Easterbrook Road, and consequently I got myself involved in an issue between neighbours over a drain. One neighbour wouldn't clean it and it was affecting the other neighbour, so I rang the council and spoke to the appropriate person, who sort of said there's not a lot they can do. So I advised the owner, I advised the people that had the issue to get it cleaned and tell the owner that they're going to do that and bill them for it. I don't know what's happened since, but it just brought me into just how neighbours can squabble. And when I spoke to the council person on the drains, the troublemaker was known to the council people from the neighbour from the other side. So that was an interesting issue. I hope it gets resolved.
Thank you. Just to back up Board Member Williams' comments about how busy it's been, and just to, we touched on it at the start of the meeting with regard to rubbish. So water, sewer and rubbish were vital issues, and at the start of the lockdown, trying to keep in particular rubbish as operational as possible was incredibly challenging. And the Mayor and I went up yesterday to Southbrook and gave a letter on behalf of Council to Waste Management, and I re-emphasised the comments I think I mentioned to this board. During, in particular this, they haven't just been our contractors, they've been our partners in some very trying times. So I was very pleased to have the opportunity to go, and albeit it's a letter, but it certainly meant a fair bit to Waste Management to have that acknowledgement. And some of the stories I heard with regard to the abuse that their staff, and by extension some of ours, as most of you are aware, our aquatic staff, the pools were closed, and so they volunteered their services to civil defence. They were assisting phone orders at the supermarkets. When the transfer stations were able to take cars, there were queues that needed to be assisted in and out of the facility. So there was a heck of a lot that was happening in behind the scenes to keep that essential service as operational as possible. You can imagine the situation, we've all seen it overseas, where all of a sudden solid waste is not being picked up and the health hazards that in turn creates. So it was an incredibly busy period. Just with regard to that meeting, the Solid and Hazardous Waste Working Party again started the meeting. I sent Kitty through a list of potential dates on Monday. She'll go through and look at diaries of other members before something comes out, but we're certainly trying for, I think it's the 30th of June or the week and a half after the into July for that meeting. Thank you.
I went to the same WAG meeting, the Access, Waimakariri Access Group as Joan, and the concern with people who haven't got internet access, trying to get information, and perhaps the importance of still continuing with hard copies of like newspapers and that to get information out to people was something that was raised. Another thing, I've heard of a problem with people in a rural area who've got a beehive that's been put on their boundary by the neighbouring property, and they've got no way, and another neighbour happens to have anaphylaxis in relation to bees, but there's no way to control where people put beehives on properties, I understand. And I wondered if something could be done. Is there anything about that sort of thing? This is on lifestyle blocks. And yeah, anyway, that's all. Thank you.
Could ring Nick Harrison and ask him if there are any ways in dealing with some of that. If there is, you could pass it on. If there's not, but Nick would be the right person to ring there.
Yes, well, we've been fairly busy, as you know, with the annual plan, but the lack of community meetings has actually made me feel like I'm quite quiet. I'm home during the evenings, so I volunteered to help with Student Volunteer Army in our district. And so I've been doing groceries mainly. And they're actually now moving also into tech help, where they can actually offer students to come and help people, and they're partnering with Charles Upham retirement in village and places like that to actually have the young people come in and help the older people to use Zoom or to talk to their relatives. So it's actually built some really lovely partnerships. On the council side, I attended SSW twice with Social Services Waimakariri on Zoom. The food banks have gone absolutely crazy. People have never accessed food banks before. They are under huge pressure. Mental health keeps popping up is a significant issue, and rent is going to hit now that the wage subsidy is finished. So there is going to be a lot of hardship happening in all districts. So that's obviously something that they're keeping a very close eye on. On the good news side, the Cust community path is done down to the community centre. So next Anzac Day, we'll be able to all walk up the path. And the Cust Community Centre, I just asked the question at council, they're hoping to have the initial work done by about the end of June. So we'll keep posted on that one. This week we've got, the district plan obviously has been delayed. The notification dates have been slid out. That won't happen until 2021 now. But we're still pushing forward with all the information on that and trying to come up with some sort of ways forward by talking to various stakeholders going forward, but that won't happen in 2020 now. And this week we've got the Land and Water Committee tomorrow, which we will be setting up the Arohatia Te Awa working group to start the paths around the rivers and actually looking at those linkages. So that's another small step forward for us in that space.
It's been reasonably busy at work lately. But on that note, I'd just like to commend everyone that did actually volunteer their time to come and help us in the supermarkets, because it was a wee bit rough at times. But in terms of community board meetings and stuff like that, it's been a bit quiet for me.
Yeah, well, seeing I was a bit disconnected from these meetings because of the lack of a web camera, I did put in submissions, 3 submissions on cycling and walking strategy in the district. Not against cycling, but one of the issues I raised was I was a bit worried about the conflict between high-speed road cyclists and people on walking frames on the same footpath. And the other issue I did raise particularly was the passing distance of cyclists, which is 1.5 metres in a vehicle, and I think that's fair enough too, but there didn't seem to be any requirement for where the cyclist was placed actually on the road, which had the effect of putting you in a motor vehicle on the wrong side of the road. And I thought that was a problem, but what I've noticed, all the cyclists going to work in the morning, all riding very carefully on the side of the road, but in the weekend they're all over the road, and that's where a problem comes in, I think. I had further discussions with Jan Pentecost from Grey Power and Matt Ducey and CDHB over improving the health services up here in the health hub. We're trying to get more ophthalmology done up here, cancer clinics, and there was another one I just can't think of at the moment. But we're pushing to get these services up here because we think that it will be more convenient for the local residents, especially the older ones, and it will also have a value to the hospital board in decreasing the number of cars trying to park at the hospital because they'll be up here instead. So that's the thing that I'm working on. And I've been talking to the neighbours down our end of town, and I've actually written a letter to the council complimenting on that pathway they've put between Townsend Road Extension and Pentecost Road. It's made a huge difference because it stopped people walking on the road, and it was a pretty narrow road. It was a bit exciting in the fog. And the thing that I was asked today by some of them down there, they said there's a lot of children walking through Green Street to Southbrook and then eventually going down Alice Road, where myself and the chairman's discussed before having a cycleway down there to get through to the other end of town. But there's no walkway in Green Street. If you remember or recollect, Green Street's been turned into a giant drainage ditch. So if they've done a wonderful job of putting a path on one side, and I've written a letter to Jerry Cleary thanking him for that, but I'm wondering whether they could put one on one side of that drainage area too, so the kids can get from all those houses that are up the other end of town down to the south end, because there's no way of doing it without them going right round the block. And they're walking in the grass and in the mud at the moment, which isn't very good. Anyway, that's all I've done at this stage anyway. It's as far as I could get from home. Oh, here.
Right, thank you for that. Item 13, there are no consultation projects. Item 14 is for your information. Item 15, I don't think there are any media items. There are no questions. There's no urgent general business. So we'll now move into the workshop. We've got Vanessa to talk about innovating streets for the People Pilot Fund.